There's a new film out called Daphne with this fantastic central performance by Emily Beecham. And this is a feature debut from Peter Mackie-Burns and writer Nico Mensinga. And the story is that there is this young Londoner. Well, she thinks she's not so young anymore, though at my age, everybody is young, who has basically drifted into her early 30s, apparently without clear direction and riddled with a kind of firecracker angst. She works in a kitchen where she grafts very hard at play. She drinks, she takes drugs, she is intimate with whomever she pleases, with whomever she likes, and some people that she doesn't like. And there is a hint of there's a hint of self-destructiveness in it, but it's more a kind of sense of being exasperated by the world not being able to keep up with her. And she's very, very isolated from everybody. She is somebody who lives a very insular existence. Although she's out and gregarious and out in the world, she has cut herself off emotionally from everybody around her. She's started to deaden herself emotionally, including, specifically, her mother. Here's a clip.
What have you done with your hair? Don't overreact. Didn't mean it like that.
What are you doing here?
Charming way to greet your mother.
I meant to say was what a lovely surprise.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Well, can I come in, or are we going to stand here like lemons?
Like lemons, preferably.
Right. Here. I bought you a present. It's a mindfulness CD.
This week, mindfulness. Last week was it naked yoga. What's next week going to be, Mother?
Will you just open the bloody door?
So you can hear from that the sort of spiky brittleness of her relationship with her mother, and indeed her relationship with the rest of the world. Then what happens is she finds herself suddenly confronted with an apparently random act of violence. And when it happens, not to her, she observes it. When it happens, she seems to display an almost sociopathic lack of empathy. If you read John Ronson's book, the psychopath test, there's lots about sociopathy, and there was this idea about being disconnected, being sort of somehow cut off and not being able to feel emotional resonance. And this starts to kind of eat away at her, and yet there is a suggestion that, despite the fact that what she says is, "I don't feel anything. I didn't feel shocked. I didn't feel worried for him. It just happened." There is a sense that I think is very powerfully portrayed that, in fact, something is happening, something is unraveling. And as she carries on her life, you get the sense that she's come to some kind of crossroads and that everything is starting to move towards a sort of make or break situation. And I think it works for a number of reasons. Firstly, Emily Beecham is really terrific. I mean, there are very few moments in the film when the camera isn't absolutely on it. You talked about Jennifer Lawrence in Mother, and it's a performance which is looking over her shoulder and looking at
her face. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's fairly similar in terms of the central role in Daphne. Emily Beecham's been a load of things which you will have seen her in, many of which you won't recognise her from. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant in a small scene in Hail Caesar, in the scene in Hail Caesar. And she's done, you realise when you look at her CV that you've seen her in loads of other things, but I've never kind of connected that as being the same person. What's really interesting is I've always said that the mark of a really good actor is somebody that you can see in 3 or 4 different movies and go, oh, that was them. Wow, I didn't realise that. And what I like is that what the film does is, firstly, it doesn't portray her as just sort of simply, cracked or fractured. What it does is it portrays her as somebody who is out of sync with the world that she's in. She is fiercely self-determined, but also has a kind of self-destructive streak. But that feels like a sort of a strange way of reflecting her aggression at the world, which is also somehow part of her own anxiety about feeling disconnected about it. And what I like about it is that when you talk about it, as I'm trying to do now, you don't talk about it in terms of plot. You talk about it in terms, one talks about it in terms of the moods that it evokes, in terms of it's a very, very three-dimensional portrait of somebody whose company is often infuriating and who seems to be on a path of, as I said, kind of, almost willingly being out of control. And yet you care about her. You understand her, particularly impressive considering how fantastically standoffy she is with the rest of the world, and you sympathise with her. I thought it was a very fine piece of work, very well made, with a fantastic performance by Emily Beecham, and it is called Daphne.